Story 1. My name is Eric Donnelly. I'm 38 years old, and until recently, my life was a balanced mix of spreadsheets, meetings, and terrible office coffee. I work as a civil engineer at a mid-sized company in Flagstaff, Arizona, and I've always been the type of guy who solves everything with logic. But logic doesn't hold a marriage together, does it? 3 months after signing the divorce papers with the woman I'd shared 15 years of my life with, I started to feel like I had lost more than just a ring on my finger. It felt like I had lost myself too. That's when I decided to take my Ford F-150, my tent, a few blankets, and disappear for a few days into the Arizona mountains, near an old mining trail my grandfather used to talk about when I was a kid. It wasn't a tourist spot, nor was it marked. You could only get there with four-wheel drive and a bit of courage. The trail I followed was partially covered with bushes, rocks, and the bones of small animals. Or at least, that's what I thought. I reached a high point where you could see the entire valley and decided to set up camp right there. No internet, no city noise, just the sound of the wind cutting through the pines and the scent of dry earth. It was exactly the kind of isolation I thought I needed to clear my head. For the first 2 days, I went on short hikes, read an old book I had tossed in the truck bed, and cooked some canned chili over the fire. But at night, it was a different story. The first night I woke up to a sharp sound, like someone stepping on a branch just a few meters from my tent. I froze for a few seconds, listening only to my own breathing and the faint noise of the zipper swinging in the wind. I tried convincing myself it was just an animal, maybe a deer, a curious coyote, or even a badger. But when I heard what sounded like a whisper, I couldn't sleep anymore. The next night, the pattern repeated, cracking branches, breathing that wasn't mine, and that overwhelming feeling of being watched from just outside the thin tent fabric. I know it sounds like the imagination of a freshly divorced man sleeping alone in the middle of nowhere, but I swear on everything that I heard it. And it heard me too. On the third night, something changed. It wasn't just sounds or feelings anymore. I woke up to a flickering light piercing through the fabric of my tent. A flashlight, then another, and another. 3 beams of light dancing outside. My heart started pounding so hard it felt like it would break through my ribs. I clutched my pocket knife, as if that would help, and stayed completely still, praying it was just some drunk campers. But then came the voices, low, dry. One of them kicked the side of the tent and said, "Come out now, we just want what's ours." I didn't think. I unzipped the tent in one move, left everything behind, and ran like a madman to my truck. When I started the engine, I saw in the rearview mirror one of the guys running and grabbing onto the truck bed. I floored it over that rocky, muddy trail, hearing his fingers scraping against the metal until he finally let go. I don't know how I managed to drive in that state. My eyes were blurry, my hands shaking on the wheel, and the rearview mirror seemed to show things that might not even have been there. I drove for almost an hour, aimlessly, until I found a wider dirt road. When I stopped, my arms were locked onto the steering wheel and my teeth were chattering. That's when I smelled something burning. The clutch had been forced too much on the downhill, but I didn't care. I stayed inside the truck for about 30 more minutes, sweating cold, trying to figure out if everything had really happened or if I had finally snapped, until I saw a drop of blood in the truck bed. Then I knew. It wasn't paranoia. Those guys were armed, and one of them nearly climbed in with me into that hell. The next day, I went back to Flagstaff and straight to my sister's house. I didn't sleep for 2 days. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the flickering flashlights, or I heard the dry thump of a boot against the tent. I tried filing a report at the police station, but without an exact address, no car plates, no names or faces, the cops couldn't do anything. One even laughed, saying I was lucky to still be in one piece. And maybe he was right. But lucky isn't the word I would use. That night broke me in a way I didn't expect. For weeks, I could only sleep with the TV on and a baseball bat beside the bed. The strangest part is that, a few days later, I got an anonymous call, a number from a rural area. I answered, thinking it was a mistake, but a voice on the other end whispered, "You ran well, but not everyone gets that chance." It was a hoarse, slow voice, as if amused. I froze, couldn't say anything, just hung up. I changed my number, moved to a different address, and sold the truck. Every detail of that place, the crumbling rocks on the ground, the sound of the wind through the shrubs, even the smell of the tent fabric, stayed stuck to me like an invisible thorn. It was like I had returned physically, but my mind had stayed on that trail. It's been almost a year now. I've never camped alone again. In fact, not even close to dense woods. I joined an urban trekking group, and when I venture out, it's with maps, radios, and people nearby. Sometimes I catch myself wondering if those guys were just robbers, or if there was something more about that trail. Someone later told me that area had been used decades ago for illegal mining, and that many people went missing there in the 60s and 70s. But nothing official, nothing the police talk about. When I asked a local old-timer, a man in his 80s, he simply said, "Some places don't want to be remembered, son. You were lucky to be forgotten by it." Since then, I don't doubt anything anymore. One night back at home, I woke up to the sound of the doorbell. It was almost 3 in the morning. I looked through the peephole, no one there. But when I opened the door, there was a small, dark, round stone on the doormat, just like the ones on the ground near that trail where I camped. It might seem silly, might be coincidence, but I had never seen a stone like that in the city before. It was as if someone was telling me they knew where I was. I kept that stone inside a glass jar with a lid. I still have it, but I never told anyone. Not even my sister knows. I feel that if I throw it away, it might show up again at the door. And honestly, I'm not ready for that kind of confirmation. Since then, I live on edge. I installed cameras in the backyard, motion sensors, all those things you never think you'll need until you feel you're being watched. Some friends say it's just trauma, that I'm seeing things where there's nothing. But people who have never been hunted don't understand what it's like to feel true fear. The kind that seeps into your skin and sticks to your bones. The kind that makes you doubt even the silence. I don't sleep in tents anymore. In fact, I barely sleep without triple checking every lock. Sometimes I wake up to footsteps that aren't there. And even knowing it's probably just my mind, I can't ignore it. Recently, I dreamed about that night again, but this time there was a new detail. One of the guys who attacked me pulled off his hood, and the face underneath was mine. Only older, hollow-eyed, lifeless, like I had aged 30 years. I woke up drenched in sweat, feeling like that place hadn't just tried to destroy me, but had taken a part of me away, and maybe left something else behind. Since that dream, I avoid talking about it with people. They wouldn't understand, and I don't want to spread that fear. I don't want to contaminate anyone with it. The craziest part is that, despite everything, sometimes I miss the silence of the mountains, the cold night air, the feeling of having no one around. But now, when I think about it, I see the flickering flashlight, the footsteps outside the tent, the breathing that wasn't mine. I hear the sound of the tent fabric being pulled, the zipper slowly opening. It's like every good memory is tainted by that night, as if despair stamped every minute of that trip. And even though I survived, even though I escaped, I think part of me is still there, kneeling inside the tent, clutching a ridiculous knife, waiting for the worst to happen. One day I tried to rationalize everything. I grabbed a notebook and wrote down every detail I could remember from that night. The sounds, the voices, the movements. I tried drawing the face of the guy I saw in the dream, tried mapping the way back to that place. It was like I was trying to prove to myself that I had control over it, that it was just an isolated event. But the more I wrote, the more confusing everything became. The voices seemed to change tone. The memory of the place became distorted, as if my mind was sabotaging reality. At one point I wrote a sentence without even realizing it. "You should have stayed." And I swear to God, I have no idea why I wrote that. It was my handwriting, my hand, but I don't remember even thinking that. The psychologist I started seeing afterwards said it could be dissociation, that my brain was trying to process trauma and filling the gaps with symbolic images and phrases. Maybe, but I can't help but think there might be something more, because ever since that day, I've noticed small changes in myself. My reflexes are sharper. I pick up on low sounds I never noticed before. And I've had this strange feeling that I can sense when something is wrong in a place, like a very strong intuition. I've even avoided entering a parking lot or crossing a street because of it. And every single time I later found out something bad had actually happened nearby. Coincidence? Maybe. But the frequency of it bothers me. The worst part, though, isn't the nightmares or the signs. It's the guilt. Because as much as I know I was a victim that night, part of me feels like I provoked it. Like by choosing that place, I had entered somewhere I shouldn't have. Some people say nature is neutral, that the world is just random. But I don't believe that anymore. That place, that trail, It felt like it was waiting for someone, and for some reason I can't understand. It chose me. It's as if it tested me, let me escape, but only for now. Last week I received an envelope with no sender. Inside, there was just one thing, a photo of my truck parked outside my sister's house, taken at night. The image was a little blurry with a yellowish streetlight glow, but you could clearly see the model, the license plate, and even the scratch on the side that the intruder made when he grabbed on. No note, no explanation, just the picture. I gave it to the police, of course, but once again, they couldn't do anything. Street cameras hadn't captured anyone strange. Since then, I sleep with a knife under my pillow and never leave my door unlocked, not even for a second. I know this isn't over. After the photo, I decided to move. I requested a transfer at work, sold what I could, and moved to another state, Utah. I got a simple apartment in a building full of people, with cameras on every floor and a 24-hour front desk. I wanted the opposite of isolation. I wanted noise, movement, witnesses, anything that would make me feel part of the normal world again. And for a while it worked. The nightmares lessened, I started sleeping better, and even went back to driving long roads. But even so, I've never touched a tent again, nor a trail, nor a forest. It's like that part of my life was locked in a box labeled, "Never open again." Some people ask why I never tried to find out who those men were that night, whether they were robbers, hunters, psychopaths, or something else. But the truth is, I never wanted to know. Some things, when you dig too deep, end up pulling you back in. I don't want to go back, not even mentally, because the last time I entered that trail, even unknowingly, I took something with me and left something else behind. And to this day, when I close my eyes, I feel like someone, or something, is still waiting for me to show up again. I had thought about writing this story before, but never had the courage. It was like giving shape to what I lived, as if making it public would make it real again. But now I see that keeping it all to myself didn't help at all. Maybe someone out there needs to read this. Maybe someone is thinking about isolating themselves, about camping alone in a place no one knows, thinking the world will give them a break. If that's your case, think twice. Not all silence is peace, not every trail is just a path, and not every encounter is with the living. Today, I go on with my life, as much as possible. Work, groceries, short walks in the park, always during the day. But every time I feel a cold wind hit the back of my neck, every time I hear a dry snap behind me, my body remembers, and so do I. Because no matter how far you run, some places follow you, and some memories never come back, because they never really left. Story 2. My name is Luis Hernandez. I'm 29 years old, a freelance photographer, and for the past few years, my life has fit inside a backpack and an old Toyota Corolla adapted for long trips. After quitting my steady job in 2020, I started traveling across the US, photographing abandoned places, factories, gas stations in the middle of nowhere, even ghost towns in forgotten states on the map. My work started to gain some attention online, which gave me the courage to keep going. Each image was an attempt to capture the silence left behind after life abandoned a place. But nothing prepared me for what I experienced at that eco-resort. It happened at the end of October last year. I was traveling from Colorado to New Mexico when a guy from a travelers group on Telegram sent me a link to a place called Valley Springs Eco Lodge. According to him, it was a forgotten gem, overlooking a dry canyon with total peace and old cabins, perfect for atmospheric shots. I checked the website, which looked pretty basic, but had some nice photos and an absurdly low price, $15 a night. I didn't think twice. I booked directly with someone named Mr. Acker and received an email with strange instructions, like don't trust the GPS, don't enter through the main road, and arrive before 5 p.m. I thought it was quirky. Today I realize I should have run away immediately. I arrived late in the afternoon, with the sun licking the tops of the trees and a strange breeze making the leaves swirl on the ground like they were dancing in circles. The entrance to the so-called resort was a cracked wooden arch with almost illegible letters, Vesselage. The place looked like a post-apocalyptic movie set. Several weathered wooden cabins, rusty signs with motivational phrases like "Breathe nature," and an abandoned reception desk with the door wide open. I didn't see anyone. No cars, no sounds. Only the wind and the constant rustling of leaves. I grabbed the key that Mr. Acker said would be hanging behind the raccoon sign and went straight to cabin 5, which he had reserved for me. I had no idea it would be the worst night of my life. The first night was just weird. I slept poorly. With that heavy silence you only get in places without even crickets chirping. The cabin's structure creaked with the wind, and I swear that, at certain moments, it sounded like footsteps on the porch. But I tried to ignore it. I blamed road stress. I took a few long exposure shots out the cabin window at night, trying to capture the mist rising from the bushes like cigarette smoke. But the second night, everything changed. I was editing some images when I heard 3 sharp knocks on the side of the cabin. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't an animal. It was rhythmic, strong knocks, as if someone was using a log to get my attention. And then, hell began. I slowly got up from my chair, trying to listen again. My heart was already racing, but my mind clung to logic. Maybe a lost visitor. Maybe the owner wanting to talk to me. But why knock like that? I walked to the front window but saw nothing. Just darkness and the faint glow of the lantern I had left hanging on the porch, swaying lightly. I went back inside and locked the door with the rusty iron bolt. 5 minutes later, more knocks. Now from the other side, as if whatever, or whoever, was circling the cabin. Then came the footsteps. Heavy, dragging, slow. The porch wood groaned with each step that thing took. What froze me wasn't the sound, it was the smell. Out of nowhere, a strong stench of mold, old sweat, and blood invaded the cabin, as if someone had opened a cellar locked for decades. I backed away from the door and grabbed my tripod like an improvised spear. Lights, none. Phone, no signal. I was completely isolated, and it was already past 1 in the morning. Then suddenly, the doorknob turned. Not slowly. It turned hard, as if someone was trying to break in at once. 3 seconds later, the door simply flew backward, like it had been kicked open with brutal force, and he entered. A man, or what was left of one, with a face smeared with dry blood, eyes wide open as if they hadn't blinked in hours, and an old axe in his right hand. He wore a ripped flannel shirt and dirty jeans stained with dark patches on the legs. There was something wrong with him beyond appearance. He made no sound as he moved, as if his steps were absorbed by the floor. When our eyes met, I felt a wave of pure terror. It wasn't just fear of dying. It was fear of losing my mind right there. Before I could react, he lunged at me and hit me with the axe handle right in the ribs. The pain was instant and sharp. I collapsed onto the floor, tasting blood in my mouth. I don't know where I found the strength, but I dragged myself to the bathroom and managed to lock myself inside. The lock was old, weak, but it held for a few seconds. Outside, he was ramming the door with his shoulder, and with every impact, the whole wall trembled. I grabbed my cell phone and frantically searched for the window with trembling hands. It was small, but I could fit through if I pulled the grill off. I used the toilet paper holder's metal support to loosen the screws. I heard another crash. He shouted something, a mix of words and guttural sounds. And then, silence. Absolute silence. I pulled the window open, squeezed through with difficulty, and fell outside into dry bushes. My arm got cut by some branch, but I didn't even feel it. I ran. Didn't look back. My feet tore through the dry underbrush as I tried to remember where I had left the car. The lantern was left swinging on the porch, so all I had was the faint moonlight filtering through the trees. The air felt heavier, like the forest had suddenly thickened, suffocating. After running what felt like miles, I found the dirt road I had driven down 2 days earlier. My Corolla was there, just as I had left it, but the passenger door was wide open. I would never have left it like that. I jumped in, locked the doors, started the engine with trembling hands, and sped off like hell itself was chasing me. I managed to get out of the road and drive to a police station about 40 minutes away. I arrived covered in dry blood, breathing like a cornered animal. When I explained everything, they looked at me like I had dreamed it up or was a drug addict having a bad trip. One older cop took an interest and went back with me to the place at dawn. But when we arrived, there was nothing. No cabins, no wooden arch. Just a clearing, tall weeds and traces of old construction being swallowed by roots. It was like the place had never existed. I showed him the photos I had taken on the first day, and he just nodded with a look like he had seen something similar before. He said only, "That place was closed down almost 20 years ago, after a fire. 2 employees died. One of them was a groundskeeper. He vanished and was never found." I returned home in shock. Spent days trying to understand how an entire place could simply disappear. I started researching on my own, digging into forums, searching old records. Eventually, I found a digitized old newspaper article titled, "Employee Disappears After Valley Springs Eco Lodge Tragedy." The black and white photo was grainy, but I could make out the man's face. It was him, the same man who had entered my cabin. The axe, the hollow stare. It was as if time had frozen that figure into an eternal repetition. They said he snapped after the resort owner fled, leaving everyone unpaid and without explanation. Some believe he went crazy and never left the place. Others think he died in the fire and his body was never found. Since then, I've never trusted lodging links that aren't from verified websites. I started calling every place before booking, researching the history, checking Google Earth, reading reviews. My photography work continued, but now with a heavy dose of caution. Sleeping in isolated places? Never again. I still have scars on my arm from that day. Physically, they've almost disappeared. But what really stayed was the feeling, that sensation of being in a place forgotten by time, where if you're not careful, you could get trapped forever. Some nights I still dream of that cabin. Only in the dreams I never manage to escape. I stay trapped in that tiny bathroom, hearing the doorknob turning slowly, feeling the wood vibrate with every blow. I wake up drenched in sweat like I've run a marathon. I tried talking to some friends about it, but most of them think I just went through some badly explained assault. Nobody understands how wrong it felt. It wasn't just a physical attack. It was as if that place had a life of its own, a silent hunger waiting for someone lonely to show up. And I was stupid enough to walk right into its trap. After a long time trying to rationalize it, I accepted one thing. Some places simply don't want to be remembered, and sometimes they show themselves to people who should never have found them. I don't know if it was some kind of local collective delusion, a sick game set up by some maniac, or if I really stumbled into a forgotten slice of time. All I know is I came back different. I used to seek out loneliness on every trip. Now I flee from it, traveling alone, only to big cities with people around, lights on every corner and noise, lots of noise. Silence is now my worst enemy. I even tried to go back to that spot on the map months later, as if needing to close a cycle. I brought a friend, equipped the car, planned everything. But when we got there, it was just dense forest, with no sign of any trail or road, no trace of any construction, as if the place had been swallowed by the earth or simply erased. The strange thing is, even so, when we opened the car door, I smelled it again. Mold, damp earth, and a metallic scent in the air. It was enough for us to know we had to leave and never go back. Today, I keep photographing, but with a different mindset. When I look at an abandoned landscape, I don't just see melancholic beauty anymore. I see the things that get left behind, waiting patiently for someone to look back. And I promise you, if you ever feel that strange prickling at the back of your neck, that gut feeling screaming for you to leave a place, listen, because some doors, once opened, never really close again. Story 3. My name is Tamara Fields. I'm 33 years old, and I'm a biologist specialized in wildlife rehabilitation. My entire life has always revolved around nature, work, study, and most of all, personal passion. When I wasn't buried in some rehab center saving injured owls or cleaning rescue tanks for turtles, I used to lose myself in isolated trails, alone, without fear, at least until what happened that autumn night, on a road near the Tahoma Reserve in Washington State. That day was supposed to be just another peaceful trip back after a routine visit to a rehab center, but it ended up changing forever the way I see what we call wildlife. It was late afternoon when I hit the road back. The sunlight had already started to disappear behind the tall trees, and the sky mixed in a tone between blue and purple, with thick clouds starting to form. Tahoma is a beautiful place, but it also has that vibe of untouched nature, almost like time doesn't pass there. Very few signs, no public lighting, and the road was basically a strip of cracked asphalt cutting through a wall of centuries-old pines. I knew the area from previous trips, but that day, the atmosphere felt strange, too silent. No crickets, no crows, just the sound of my car's engine echoing between the trees. About 15 minutes after leaving the rehab center, I noticed something on the right side of the road. 2 red dots still at shoulder height along the roadside. At first I thought it was the reflection of my headlights on a deer's eyes. It was common to see deer around there, especially at dusk. But as I got closer, I started realizing those eyes were much lower than where a deer's eyes would be, and something was wrong with how they shone. It wasn't just reflection. It was a deeper, intense glow, almost like they were light sources themselves. When my headlights illuminated it better, my stomach simply flipped. That was no deer, nor any animal I had ever seen. And trust me, I've seen a lot of weird things working with wildlife. What stood by the roadside had a hunched body, as if it was broken in half but still looked incredibly agile. Its arms were disproportionately long, with sharp claws that scratched the dirt lightly, as if preparing for an attack. The skin, or what looked like skin, was dark gray, stretched too tightly over an abnormally thin bone structure. And the eyes, my God, those eyes looked like they were staring straight into my soul. My whole body froze. It was as if my brain knew that any movement could attract its attention, but at the same time understood that staying still was almost just as dangerous. I tried to take a deep breath, but the air wouldn't fully reach my lungs. For a few endless seconds, all that existed was the low hum of the engine and that creature staring at me from the side of the road. I can't fully explain how, but you could feel hatred radiating from it, a physical hostility. It wasn't natural predator fear. It was different. It was as if that thing knew I didn't belong there, that I deserved to be erased. Just when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, when I thought my heart would simply explode, things got worse. The creature moved. First, its arms stretched even further, as if adapting to the ground. Then it took a step, then another, dragging itself towards me with clumsy, yet terrifyingly fast movements. I wanted to hit the gas, to get out of there, but it was like my hands were glued to the steering wheel. That's when, just in time, a pair of headlights appeared in my rearview mirror. A large vehicle, probably a pickup truck, was approaching at high speed. The creature stopped, as if it knew someone else was coming. The red glow of its eyes dimmed, like dying embers, and with a movement almost too quick to follow, it turned and vanished into the forest. It didn't run like an animal, tripping over branches or making noise. It was like the underbrush simply swallowed it. The vehicle behind me skidded to a stop next to me, raising dust all around. It was a park ranger, a man in his 50s, his face weathered by the sun, wearing a worn-out uniform. He got out quickly, looking around like he already knew what he was looking for. He approached my window, which I barely managed to roll down, my hands shaking badly. "You saw it, didn't you?" he asked, in a hoarse but calm voice, like someone who was used to seeing people terrified. I could only nod. He looked at the dense forest for a few seconds, then turned back to me and said, "You got lucky. Some folks see it and don't come back to tell about it." In that moment, the fear I had been feeling turned into something worse, the realization that I had stumbled into something much bigger than I could understand, and that somehow I had survived by the skin of my teeth. The ranger asked me to follow his truck to a makeshift patrol base about 15 minutes away. I obeyed, of course. I could barely think. I just wanted to get away from that piece of road as fast as possible. Along the way, I kept looking to the sides, half expecting to see those red eyes again, glowing by the roadside or among the trees. But all I saw were shadows that seemed to move whenever I blinked, and a constant feeling that something was still watching me from a distance. When we finally reached the base, a small outpost surrounded by low fences and light posts, I started breathing a little easier, but the tension never fully left. Inside the base, the ranger offered me some water and asked me to recount exactly what I had seen. I told him everything: the creature's height, its bizarre body shape, the claws, the eyes. He listened without interrupting, nodding occasionally, as if mentally confirming my words. At the end, he sighed and told me a story that sounded straight out of an urban legend. Old locals talked about things in the forest, things that were there long before roads, parks, or towns, something that was not meant to be disturbed. "It doesn't always show itself," he said, "only to those who are alone, to those the woods feel they can take." He warned me never to drive alone on that road after dark again. "Sometimes seeing isn't the real problem," he said quietly, weighing each word. "Sometimes, once you see, you've been seen too." And that stuck with me deeper than any biology lecture, any jungle trail, any encounter with natural predators ever had. The idea that there was something out there, something that didn't follow the rules of nature as I knew them, planted a new kind of fear inside me. A fear with no scent, no sound, no clear shape. but one that lodges deep in your skin and never leaves. After that night, I changed a lot of my habits. I stopped accepting work assignments in remote areas, avoided trips that involved unlit forest roads, and always double-checked maps and schedules obsessively. I still love nature. I still believe in the importance of my work, but now I carry a different kind of respect. Not the romantic respect of admiring a sunset through the trees. It's the respect of someone who knows there are things out there, in the darkness, that don't care if you understand or not. Things that just want to be left alone, and don't always accept being ignored. Several times after that day, I tried talking about what happened, with friends, co-workers, even during a lecture I gave to biology students. But every time I told the story, I saw that same look appear on people's faces, a mix of pity and doubt. Like they thought, poor girl, spent too much time in the woods. I was even called crazy, overly impressionable. Some suggested I was having a stress-induced hallucination. And the worst part is, after hearing that so many times, I started doubting myself. Did I make it up? Was my mind playing tricks on me? But then I remember the smell, the way the underbrush seemed to swallow that creature, the look in the ranger's eyes, and I know it was real. The last time I passed near Tahoma was months later during a work trip. This time I took the main road, well paved, busy, full of signs. Even so, when I passed near the entrance to the old forest road, my entire body shivered, as if a cold wave had washed over my skin. I didn't see anything. I didn't hear anything, but I felt it, a heaviness in the air, a silent warning. I pressed the accelerator and didn't look back. Since then, I promised myself I would never return, not even out of curiosity. Some stories don't need to be rewritten. Today, many people still laugh when I tell this story in casual conversations. There's always someone saying, "Oh, it must have been some injured animal," or "the imagination runs wild in the dark." I just smile, change the subject, and let it go. Whoever hasn't lived it won't understand. And honestly, I think it's better that way. Some things exist in a space between the real and the impossible, where logic can't reach, where you only have two choices, respect or disappear. I made my choice. I never challenged the forest again. And honestly, I never needed to. So if you ever find yourself driving alone on an old road in the middle of nowhere, and you see two red eyes glowing in the dark, listen to what I'm saying now. Don't stop. Don't try to understand. Don't try to be brave. Accelerate and leave. Because not everything that seems lost in the forest is lost by accident. And some things are there, just waiting for the next opportunity.